Hey, everybody, welcome to In Case It Happens. My name's John Darr, and I'm here with my friend Marie Banks of Chacal Mercadante.
Hello again.
Hi, Marie. So, Marie is a personal injury attorney. I'm an insurance agent, and this podcast is about In Case It Happens, which basically is the idea is to get a personal injury attorney that's amazing. She's a wonderful attorney, and a guy that's been in the insurance business for 30 plus years and doesn't have all the answers, but tries real hard. No. Um,
Oh, you have a lot of the answers, John. Come
I
on.
am full of answers. So we thought it'd be fun. We've enjoyed doing the podcast. So we're excited to have another episode. We felt like talking about boats and all things boating might be a good topic to go over and help you in case it happens to you. So let's get started. We've got a lot to talk about today. Marie's got a lot of good information. So we'll just start, push the throttle down and shoot the boat across the water, just like these guys.
Well, yes, and we have a boating expert here. John Darr is, I would consider, he's my boating expert. You've owned boats in the past. I don't know if you still own a boat, but
I
you
currently own
like to
three
boat.
boats, so that qualifies me as something. Probably dumb, but yes, I've had
Well, they
lots.
say if you spend more than, what is it, 1,000 hours on something, you become an expert. I don't know what the thing is.
That's then I'm an expert. Yes.
You do know a lot about that and with insurance. So I feel like there's a lot of things to talk about.
Some,
Whatever those people are doing in that picture is what I want to be doing in the beautiful Florida sun. So
that's typically not the way I vote, but that's that's okay.
there's so much to consider. So we're going to cover um, types of insurance. We're going to cover there's various laws that apply depending on where you are boating. Are you in navigable waters or are you in regular state waters? We're going to talk about what if you're hauling your boat and you get in a car accident and the boat gets damaged. So I would like to start with just insurance in general. We've got an insurance agent here. John, are you required to purchase liability coverage for your boat? And I'm talking as a personal injury attorney. If you're boating, you do something silly, someone gets injured on the boat, do you have to purchase liability coverage for your boat when you purchase a boat?
No. So the answer is the state does not require a boat owner to purchase boat insurance like they do a vehicle. You don't have to. Now the lien holder, if you borrow money to buy the boat, then yes, you will need to buy insurance. They'll want to make sure that the boat's covered. But no, Florida does not require boat insurance, which
Will the lien holder just want to make sure you have insurance to cover property damage to the boat? It still might not be liability though.
correct. That's right. You technically can buy just physical damage coverage on the boat and not get liability. Now, I don't know that we would sell you that. That's not, I've never done that. That's not a smart thing to do. So if you,
Right. If there's going to be damage to the boat, that probably means someone might be getting injured too. So what is there other insurance that would cover you then? If you're in a boating accident, you don't have boating
if,
insurance.
yeah. So sometimes homeowners insurance will cover a boat. Typically, the exclusion is if the boat is less than 14 feet and there's a horsepower limit to the boat, and it's very typically very low horsepower. So the homeowners insurance policies have exclusions built into them that the intent is to cover like a canoe or something very small, that people may own that is not, it's definitely not this type of boat.
Or a
Um,
jet ski. I would think a jet ski's got a lot of horsepower.
a lot of horsepower, correct. So they limit the size of the boat and also the horsepower. And I don't remember, but I think it's like 5 horsepower or less or something like that. It's typically in homeowners insurance. There's a very low limit, which would be, I mean, a trolling motor. I mean, it's, again, it's like a canoe and a trolling motor may be covered on your homeowner's policy, but definitely not 99% of the boats out there.
Not that boat in
No.
that picture.
Yes, correct.
Not the boats that we're talking about for all the scenarios in this episode that we
Yeah, most people think of a boat as something like this. So that, yeah, I mean, boats can be, oh Lord, there's a million different kinds of boats, but in general, what we're talking about is they call this a bow rider or a ski boat or most people have like a center console boat, that kind of thing. But that's the most common is a center console or bow rider type boat.
And here's what I feel like I would want to say to people maybe watching or listening. They either want to buy a boat or they have a boat. If you don't have liability coverage on your boat, specifically boating liability, you're not very smart. I'm sorry.
She's just going to go right to it and say,
I just want to be blunt.
Dumb. It's just not smart.
And I want to tell you why. And it's okay. I'm going to give you a pass. You don't have to deal with, the reality of accidents all the time. I think most people think it's not going to happen to them, but let's just blow through a couple little scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
It's a holiday. You're going to take your boat out. You're inviting friends. Most people like to boat with friends, and most friends like to go on their friends' boats. You always, my husband Blake always says, I don't want to own a boat. I just want friends that own boats.
Amen.
You get to ride on them and you get to do fun stuff.
Yeah.
So you're having some fun. Usually there's alcohol. If you're out with friends, you might be celebrating a holiday. People are drinking. If you're just driving around, you have your boating license, everything's good. You have you're following the rules in that sense, but you might be driving a little too fast, or you might hit some wake. There's all kinds of things that in my world can be considered negligence. And then it's not like anyone's wearing a belt, like you're not strapped in or anything. Like people can fly out of the boat. We've had cases of people, flying out of the boat, landing on some type of a rocky thing or getting hurt and actually getting infections because of stuff in the water. And all of that can come back to the negligence of the boat driver, which might be you who owns the boat. If you don't have coverage to help pay those claims, those injuries, you will be personally on the hook for whatever the injuries are, whatever the medical expenses are for that person. The law says that you are responsible to pay for their pain and suffering and to pay for medical expenses. And honestly, you should want to help them. They were injured while riding on your boat. But the problem is, if you don't have the insurance to cover that, you're going to be out of pocket. And I think if you own a boat, you probably are a person of means. You obviously have some disposable income. You've purchased a boat, or maybe you are borrowing money for it or something. But it's very, very, it's very risky to not have boating insurance. So I'm going to say that on that, which John will be happy I say that, because you guys need to talk to your insurance agent if you're considering a boat or you have a boat, you don't know if it's covered. Find out and get important coverage, especially if your boat, if you use it a lot for social activities.
And here's the crazy part is the liability for boats, the liability portion of in general for boat insurance, it's not that expensive. You can't make an argument that, I just bought this boat. And even if you borrowed money to buy the boat, it's going to be a $500, $600, $700 a month payment. Your general liability, or the liability that comes on the boat, is going to be a small percentage of the cost of that boat. Now, you could run into a problem. Some of the boats that they are building now have engines that are way more than should be on the boat. So if you go out and buy a boat that's 18 feet, but it has a 450 horsepower engine, which they sell some of those boats out there, the liability could get a little expensive, but typically they just exclude those types of boats. So the carriers will come in and say, look, if it's an 18-foot boat and has more than 300 horsepower, it's not eligible. So we won't even write a policy. So in general, the liability portion of a boat policy is not the most expensive part. Typically it's the physical damage part, because you've got, boats that are, oh Lord, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've written
boat itself
boats that are $1 million. They're $1 million. I've insured boats that are $1 million, and that's gets a little pricey. But I mean, it's fun. I love boating. It's so much fun, but you just got to make sure that you get the right coverage and then go have fun and don't worry about it. But
Right, because we're talking about in case it happens, because it might happen and you want to be prepared. So I want to segue a little bit into the difference between state law and maritime law.
yeah,
I thought this was very interesting. I just did a little bit of research on this. I am not a maritime attorney, so I want to say that on the outset.
other animal. Yeah.
It's a whole different world, and there are attorneys that they end up specializing in maritime law because it's different from state law.
Mm-hmm.
And where this applies to our friends watching who might own a boat, they might think maritime law, oh, that's for the big cargo ships. It isn't. What it has to do with is where you are located in the water. So I found a really interesting case that I wanted to share, and this happened. I mean, this is a while back, so early 2000s. But a person rented a boat from Jupiter Hills Lighthouse Marina after consuming alcohol. There's red flag number one.
Mm-hmm.
And he had passengers on the boat. And 2 hours into their trip, they were on the Loxahatchee River.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that? Is that how you say it?
Yep, Loxahatchee. Yep, been there.
Loxahatchee. The driver hit the wake from a larger boat,
Mm-hmm.
and the passenger on his boat ended up breaking her back and needed to be in a body cast. And so she sued he didn't own the boat, he rented it, but she sued him
Mm-hmm.
for his negligence. She also tried to sue the marina for, some other stuff. But what was so interesting about this case is the court found that the incident occurred in navigable waters and that the parties were engaged in activity which bears a substantial relationship to traditional maritime activity. So the courts will look at, are there vessels are vessels able to travel on this waterway for commercial purposes? That's used, and again, I'm not a maritime lawyer, so if you're a maritime lawyer listening to this, feel free to comment and correct me on anything.
Correct us, yeah.
Yeah, this is my, but it's important to pull out that there's a difference. There is going to be an analysis based on where you think you're just boating on a river in the state of Florida. But if it's navigable waters, if commercial carriers are allowed to go through it, you're now in maritime law. You don't get the benefits of, Florida state laws for negligence. And so there are some differences between state laws and maritime law. And my understanding, my very little understanding of it, that a couple of things I pulled out that I thought were significant is the statute of limitations is different, for one. So depending on where you're located, you might have a longer time to bring your claim or a shorter time. So there's a difference there. I think maritime law, you have 3 years to bring your claim. I think under boating law in Florida, state laws, you might have 4. The law just changed with regular negligence to be 2. So it's real confusing how long you have to actually bring a claim. That's important because you could be barred forever. The other thing that I pulled out from maritime law is, in any kind of negligence case, you have to show the standard of the burden of proof for the plaintiff, the person who's injured. I have to prove that it's more likely than not that this person's negligence was a substantial legal cause of my injuries. So it's like you have to have some substantial, it's like more than 50% sure. In maritime law, it's a lot less of a standard. It's, it can even just like your negligence could have just slightly added to the cause of their injuries. And that's a very, very, very low standard that nobody wants. If you're driving a boat and you think like, well, maybe I hit that wake a little too hard, but that wasn't really the cause of this person's injuries. In maritime law, you're probably on the hook no matter what. And the other thing I saw is a lot of times in maritime law, you don't get the benefit of a jury trial. It's going to be what we call a bench trial, and a judge is going to decide everything. So different laws, different rules. That's another just reason why it's important to know, when you're going to take your boat out, it might be good to find out, am I going to be, using my boat in an area where commercial carriers are allowed to like try to determine, are these navigable waters? Maybe it doesn't matter to you, but I just told you some reasons why it might.
Mhm.
Be very careful. Don't be dumb on your boat. I know people want to have fun. People want to go fast because they want to do the, the tubing and the skiing. And my husband is a lover of all things, risk taking with, we talked about this
Fire, yes.
flying manatee thing that goes up in the air that's illegal now. Like he loves it all, but you
Yeah.
just have to be really careful and know that in case something happens, you might want to just be prepared and definitely have good insurance coverage because that insurance they'll go to bat for you on your behalf if there's ever a claim for someone's
And
injuries.
for the record, the insurance doesn't matter whether it's maritime law or state law. It will respond. It doesn't designate that, oh, well, you fall under maritime, so there's some sort of exclusion. Now,
Right.
that being said, there are limits to how far away you can go in that boat. So typically, we have a lot of clients that go over to the Bahamas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So boat insurance will have a very specific mileage limit that will say this policy doesn't apply more than 150 miles from the state of Florida or 50 miles from the state or whatever. So make sure that you understand if you're going to take a boat over to the Bahamas, then you have a whole other set of laws and a whole other set of international water situations that could
right. They're different.
prevent coverage or whatever. So make sure you understand that. But as far as maritime versus state law, the insurance doesn't matter.
Right.
And I've like I said, I was driving a boat, a 50-foot boat one time, and I was driving it through the Okeechobee or the waterway between Fort Myers and Stewart is in the middle of the state. And it's a big boat and it creates a huge wake. A 50-foot boat creates a 4-foot wake and it will destroy. The wake alone will sink other boats. So I was driving it through a very narrow river. The river that goes from Fort Myers to Stewart is sometimes pretty narrow, but there's no speed limit per se. You can go as fast as you want. Well, I was going pretty fast and creating a pretty good wake, and literally it was high tide, so the side of the seawall was only it probably wasn't a foot above the water, and there was a mobile home park that had houses, mobile homes right on the water. Well, the wake I was creating was so big that I look back and the wake is literally flooding this mobile home park. Like it is going over over the seawall up into the park. Now it didn't touch the homes, but it went 20, 30 feet above this into the yards of these people. And I'm like, I didn't have any clue that it would do that. Now, my buddies in the boat, that if they watch this podcast, will remember this story clearly because they are on the floor laughing at the water that has flooded this mobile home park. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I'm flooding mobile home parks. I could sink other boats, and I'm not hitting anything. I'm just going. Like we're just going. So anyway, it was. There's lots of, you are responsible for your wake as a boater. So, it doesn't need to be a huge wake to knock somebody off a dock or, knock them in the water. And that, like Marie said, you're falling in oyster beds, you're falling, all kinds of stuff. It's you have to be aware as a boat driver of your wake for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because it is so fun to get in a boat and to go fast and to feel the wind and freedom of the, open air and the sea. But, the point is not that you can't have fun. You can. It's just to be careful and to be mindful and, you want
There's a lot of boating safety courses. Like there is a lot of them are free. So I wish I'll try to put some in the comments, but there's there's a lot of safety courses that would help make it a
You
safer.
want to be careful. And if you're a deep sea boater or fisher, I think part of the maritime stuff that I read, I think on the Atlantic coast, it's considered maritime waters beyond 3 miles from the shore.
Right.
And then on the West Coast, I think it's beyond 9 miles, maybe. So I know a lot of people who go far beyond that regularly.
Yeah. Oh,
To
yeah.
have some fun, but just know you're not in state waters. State law is not applying here anymore.
Yeah.
I think if you get in a boating accident, the law says that you must file a report.
Mhm.
You are not allowed to leave the scene if someone is injured. You can, be charged with a felony.
Mhm.
There's all kinds of things. And if you know you're going to be driving a boat, please limit the amount of alcohol you're going to consume, or just be smart about that. It's the same sort of thing with DUIs, stuff like that. So, I think these are all
it's not worth, it's not worth it. Even, anytime I'm driving, I very, very rarely drink at all. And, because it's just not worth it. There's too many things that can happen, in my opinion.
The other thing I wanted to point out about maritime law too is that can get into cruise ships. People who get injured on a cruise ship, probably going to be maritime law, and there's probably going to be a different statute of limitations anyways because of your ticket. Actually, on the back of your ticket, it's going to say, I think on some cruise ships, you get like a year to bring a claim. So cruise ship law, totally different. We get people call us, they got injured on a cruise ship, and I usually have to refer them to a maritime lawyer. So something to keep in mind. Another boating thing. But I want to ask you, if you're driving, maybe you're hauling your boat, you live in Gainesville, you own a boat, or you want to, haul it down. We have a mutual friend who used to haul boats from Naples down to the Keys, things like that. You're driving on the interstate, you get in an accident, unfortunately. What's going to cover the boat's property damage?
Still going to be the boat insurance. So the boat insurance will cover it while it's being trailered. So if
that's primary. If you have is it called collision coverage for a boat, or is that?
Yeah, there's comprehensive coverage. I pulled this up too. There's so comprehensive and collision. Yeah. Comprehensive and collision. So comprehensive, you typically think of comprehensive as theft. If it gets stolen.
Also, or tree falls on it at home.
Tree falls on it, it humps it in the yard. Exactly. That's typically comprehensive coverage. But the collision it would be if it's in an accident, or if you hit another boat, or if another boat hits you. Did you know, Marie, there is uninsured motorists on boat policies?
Really? I love that. You should get
by the max of uninsured motorists. If you listen to our podcast at all, you will know that message is very consistent by uninsured motorists. So there's not only do you cover in case you screw up, but I have a good friend of mine that got hit by a boater not too long ago, and it's a big case, and they just, the other guy, I don't know, he had minimum coverage, and it was a bass boat situation, and they were injured pretty good, and I think the other boat was going 50 miles an hour or something like that, so it was just crazy. And I have too many people that I know that have been in boating accidents. When I was in high school, a buddy of mine fell off the front of the boat. So he was riding, in this example, sitting up here. His brother was driving. He was sitting with his feet hanging off the front, which is very illegal. I see that way too many times. If you're on a boat, just know that if you're on a boat and you sit on that front with your feet hanging over the front, that is very illegal. It is very dangerous. And unfortunately, when I was in high school, one of my good buddies had this happen. He fell off. They were at a lake, and he fell off the front, and the prop hit him in the leg, and just not, changed his life forever. He was really never the same. So
awful.
It's just
not worth it.
It's not worth it. And boat insurance can't fix everything. So
no, and even in that example, if you're doing something illegal, you're going to bear a lot of that fault too in a case. You're not going to get everything paid for. If you shared in the negligence,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he was totally at fault for sitting there. Maybe the boat driver didn't do anything wrong. So that's also a consideration. If you're doing something stupid and you get injured,
Mm-hmm.
not like you could just always go after the boat insurance and expect to win. So moral of the story is be careful. Um,
Boat insurance also, I was just scanning through here real quick. There's examples of fuel spills, like when if a boat were to sink, there are very specific laws as to pollution.
mm,
So if your boat sinks, then you're going to have to pay the costs of cleaning that boat up, which includes some pollution coverage and that kind of stuff. Boat insurance will cover a lot of that, if not all of it. And I think that there's actually a minimum coverage that I want to say is $998,000 worth of coverage built into the policy to clean up if you do have a boating accident or where it sinks. You're going to have a mess on your hands cleaning
mm,
that up because they can't just go pull up the boat and all that. There's oils in a boat and stuff in a boat that needs to be cleaned up the right way, and it's not cheap. Um, Roadside assistance, there's you know most people trailer their boat rarely, and when they do, the tires are rotted or they end up the ball bearings aren't greased or something, and now they're on the side of the road
mm.
needing help. So that's important to have roadside assistance. For Blake is water sports coverage for tubing, kneeboarding,
That's got to
wakeboarding,
add to the policy for sure.
wake surfing. I mean, parasailing, kiteboarding. It's just the examples of that is important. Um, let's see, what was the other thing? Oh, the fishing equipment. Fishing that stuff's expensive. So you start talking about fishing poles and tackle and all the things that coolers now are even expensive, that could sort of walk off or fall off the boat or whatever. You should, insure those if you want to insure those. Um, Progressive has what they call propulsion plus mechanical breakdown coverage. If you're offshore and your boat breaks down and you need to be towed in, that's not cheap either.
Sounds
So,
like nothing's cheap if you want to go on a boat, have a boat. We haven't even talked about the gas,
right, the fuel,
the cost of fuel.
gosh. So, but they have coverage for if you're out there and boat breaks down, you have to get towed, that kind of stuff. Uninsured motorists. Hurricane haul out. This is interesting too. So some policies will pay if you have a hurricane coming at you and you've got your boat. Typically it's a bigger boat, but if you've got a boat in a marina that has to be hauled out, um, they'll cover up to $2,000 to haul the boat out. So these marinas, when the hurricanes come, will haul these boats out and try to get them up on dry land, and that's not free either. So the insurance,
Not free, but it sounds like great coverage for anyone who lives on the west coast of Florida right now.
absolutely,
Why
yeah,
would you not have that?
yeah, exactly. Especially if you have a decent sized boat. I mean, most people own boats they can throw on a trailer, so it's not that important. But I've owned big boats that you can't. There are no trailers, so um,
Right.
so anyway, there you
It's a
go.
lot. It's a lot to think about. We don't want to be the killjoy. You're hearing it from someone who's owned a boat, owned several boats. He's the expert. I think the moral of the story is you need insurance
Yeah,
and be careful. Get insurance, be careful, have fun.
yeah.
Um, but in case it happens, you know who to call, right?
There you go. Exactly. In case it happens, hopefully it won't, but now you're hopefully a little more educated on what's out there. And yeah, I definitely hope to see folks out on the water. I'm really good at casually relaxing on a boat or a sandbar or that fun stuff. So I'm not going to stop. I just buy insurance and go have fun and don't worry about it. But that's kind of me. So yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to add? I'm sure we could go on for hours about this, but
I don't think people want to hear anything else about the boats. We kind of covered everything. Obviously, if you have a question we didn't answer, feel free to comment and we'll try to figure out the answer for you. Or feel free to call John Darr,
Yeah.
Darr Shakow, or
Yeah.
me. I don't, may not have the answer. I may say you should call a maritime lawyer, but
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching. In case it happens, thanks, Marie, again, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Make sure to remember to like and subscribe. And if you have a question or comment, the
I'm
sun.
trying to block the sun. Sorry, guys.
Our future's so bright. We need our shades. If you comment on the YouTube page, feel free to comment, or Facebook, whatever. We'll be glad to try to answer it for you. All right. Have fun out on your boat. Thanks.